Dr. Billy Garvey, that has been episode 82. It is our first part of our second part reflection episode on changing behaviours. What are we going to learn?
So, hopefully learn a lot of stuff, but some great insights into phenomenal questions, some amazing feedback, and end on some really strong advice from another mental health clinician. And, there's going to be another part 3 follow-up because there are just so many amazing questions. And, I didn't have time to write a short letter, so here's a long one. And I just couldn't cut so many of the questions. They're just phenomenal. There's phenomenal ones this time. There'll be phenomenal ones next time when we just love how much the best thing about this podcast is the community around it. So massive shout out to everyone who took the time to send in stuff, and hopefully we do it justice.
Agree, Billy. I wore my special cardigan because I knew it was going to be a special episode this week. You'll be able to tell we do it separately at different times. I have to change the cardigan now. It's not like I just take it off. There's no wardrobe here. But a fantastic episode. I think people are going to love this one and the follow-up to the follow-up.
Yes. So, thanks, Nick. You bring so much, mate, including beautiful outfits.
Thanks, Billy. Enjoy the episode, guys.
Hi, I'm Billy, a developmental paediatrician. And I'm Nick, a developing parent. We're going to use scenes from iconic movies to talk about how we best support our kids. This is Pop Culture Parenting.
Hey, don't let your mother smell that beer on your breath. She'll take it out on me.
I don't want to see you again for the rest of my whole life. I don't want to see anybody else either.
Who is your daddy and what does he do?
Just use your best judgment. We trust you.
Good morning, Dr. Billy Garvey. How are you today?
I'm good, Nick. How are you going, mate?
Billy, I've busted out my best cardigan today.
Yes.
So the listeners
putting a lot of pressure on me.
It's been a big episode, a big topic, and I thought there's a chance there could be a couple of good videos on Instagram. So I've busted out the what do we call it, the leopard cardi with the rainbow trim.
It's beautiful.
Just painting the picture for people who are only listening to the magic.
Yeah, well, it's funny because last few episodes somehow been out of focus. I don't know if it's just it can't pick which wrinkle to focus on. And it's pretty dusty this morning. So hardest bit about the whole podcast for me is picking the questions. As you know, I go into like a 4 or 5 hour hole the night before. And then usually somewhere between 11 p.m. and midnight, I send you the questions and then I'm like, cool, and now I got to get up and think about some answers.
It's lucky he's expertly trained with 20 plus years of experience, so lots of knowledge and ongoing skill development. He's excellent, which is great. So it makes life nice and easy for us.
But how's your week been, mate, especially in the setting of behaviours and...
Good. I have been inwardly focused and outwardly helping, trying to tweak behaviours. It's kind of funny, my kids just started school, and what I've noticed is like after a tough kind of like start, my kid is starting to catch themselves on a meltdown. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Nothing I've done.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just lots of school exposure and new environment. My kid would sometimes have a meltdown. It's hard to get them back. Every parent knows that situation and teacher would see it. But I've just found, I'm focusing on the really positive stuff. They are just catching themselves. And I said to my partner last night, I was like, you noticing that? She goes, yeah. What would usually be a spiral.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know, like that behavior, and that's the sort of behavior as a parent you're trying to curb and assist with. You know what I mean? Stop.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. Stop. Because it's hard for everyone and it's hard to watch your kid do it. Anyway, so I've just noticed that. So that behaviour's been shifting, but just trying to be more supportive, modelling and stuff. But got to be clear, I don't own this behaviour change at all. This is my kid who's doing really well in a new environment.
Yeah, no, mate, claim that win. And that's awesome. She figured it out 30 years earlier than I did. She's ahead of the curve. Well, yeah, some of the time. Was that more a comment, mate? I know you're off the mic. you have not figured it out.
No, so, yeah, that's kind of been the week. That's my reflection upon behaviours. And just being, I've just really focused on being, honestly, on myself, just trying to, just improve on catching myself a lot more and just being more relaxed. I just find like the more relaxed you are, it kind of comes back to you a bit more.
Amazing. That's going to be a helpful tip for some of the questions that are coming. So,
yeah. But anyway, trying, Billy.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. And
You?
I know with both crazy week, like as everyone probably hears me play the violin as loudly as possible, I do like 4 days at the hospital, 2 days of research, and I've done 4 talks this week, so pretty busy. But sneaking in some family time, we did a big fun run on the weekend, and I got to see, I bumped into heaps of people actually. It was awesome. Do you know the funniest bit is someone came up to me and goes, "Hey mate, are you Nick?" I swear to God. And they're lovely. But when I was like, "Oh no, I'm Billy," I sensed a slight disappointment. I was like, I should have said yes and just owned it and signed the autograph. But no, so it's really beautiful because I bumped into all these people that listen and just gave such positive feedback because the community is the best thing about it.
100%.
So it was good fun, mate. It was good to get out, and Annalise did the run with 2 kids in the pram. So she's doing a try.
And you just ran off?
I just ran off, mate. Me and followed this amazing 12-year-old kid who was just
dragging you around the course.
Just dragged me like up over this bridge and everything. So it was amazing. It was
how
a
good.
big gun.
Yeah, I loved jumping on the hammer of someone that looks fast and just drag me for like let's be honest, I haven't done a race in a decade, but I used to. You're just like, oh, you've got a completed jersey before you've done this race. I'm like, you're my guy.
Yeah, you're my guy. So no, it was heaps of fun, mate. So it was really good.
But this is our second part episode, Billy. This is episode 82, Changing Behaviours Reflection. A lot of questions this week, as we always get. But I think it's actually worth calling out what we're going to do with this one, Dr. Billy Garvey.
Yeah, so I whittled all of the quality input that we had down to 30-something last night, but we've plucked out a bunch of them that we're going to get through today, and we've had some recommendations about this. We're going to break it down and do another ep of following up because there's some of them that I actually can't not answer, but if I can get it down to 20, I'll be impressed.
Yeah.
So we're going to break it up, which I think is
two-part. Yeah, so we're doing a two-part episode. We're doing a two-part part 2 episode. This will be the first time we've put 3 episodes to a single topic, but obviously one that the community's keen to hear about.
Yeah. Gives us another shot at Photoshop as well. So that's the bit I'm really excited.
The Photoshop everyone's calling out for.
Still waiting to hear some positive feedback on Photoshop. But no, so we'll do the same. We'll run the poll, we'll do some shorts, and then we'll do longs. But if you don't hear your question here, it's possibly coming in the next one.
Yep. Okay, awesome. Billy, shall we kick off with the polls that we put out on our Instagram, Pop Culture Parenting?
Yes, and please, if you listen, please follow us on Instagram. There's no financial benefit to us. It's just that we need the community there because that's where we ask you lots of things, including about some future opportunities and change-ups that might happen.
Billy, we asked the people, ever feel like you and your kid are on a different team? 81% of people said yes.
Yeah, I was in the majority.
Yeah, I was there too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I can't remember. Yes, actually. Yeah, different team.
Yeah, it's a really important part about it is that we sometimes get lost, and we'll kind of talk to that in some of the questions that are coming, but that kind of conflict and battle that we find ourselves with in kids is really important to try and get out of that.
Yep. Billy, we asked the people, sometimes lose control of your own behaviour? 95% said yes.
I know that 5% of people that don't.
They're amazing.
Yeah, that's our cohort of Buddhists that are listening to us.
Got a big Buddhist following
from the temple.
Yep.
But yeah, I think it's really important to remember the expectations that we put on our kids should be below what we ask of ourselves.
Yep.
So yeah.
Billy, the final question we asked: do you set your kid up to succeed every day? 64% of people said no, which means 36% of people said yes.
Yeah. Tough one because life is tough.
Every day.
Yeah. I think it's not a standard you should be angry at yourself if you're not meeting, but I think it's a nice goal to think about is what, we don't get many days with our kids. So I think that trying to see the priority of them is that joy, success, which is really hard because there's so many other things that we have to do for them and to keep life rolling and ticking along. But I think it is a good goal that I certainly aim for.
Yeah. I think, I don't know, I don't want to speak on behalf of the hundreds and thousands of people that actually responded, but I think we do. I think you're setting your kid up when you do nice things for them at the start of the day and actually get them to school or get them to the location. Like, it is setting them up for success. But I understand what people are saying. Like, sometimes you don't put your best foot forward is maybe what they meant.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's that kind of stretch that we talk about, the zone of proximal development. Are they getting better at dunking? Like that's the thing, is that what's the dunk that we're trying to start nailing? And that'll come up in some of the questions, but it's good to think about that. And one of the challenges is that you have too many things you're working on. Yeah. So we kind of have that stuff and we'll talk about it in some of the questions. We've got focuses that me and Alice are working on now. Yeah. That are kind of, that's the stretch. That's the bit. Yeah.
Oh, I'm interested to hear that. Yep. So the analogy, just so if you haven't listened to part one, it's a ripper. We want to be throwing out some alley-oops for our kids to slam dunk. Yeah. Before they can independently jam.
Yeah, that's our role. We're the Sydney. But who's the best assist in NBA?
John Stockton, I think it was.
Yeah, we should be Stockton.
And Karl Malone. Yeah, we're just setting up.
Jazz? Utah Jazz?
Utah Jazz.
Look at that.
You know it. There you go. Look at us.
Least sports person in the world.
American listeners, there you go. All right, Billy. We've got 10 short questions. First question. Where the hell do I start? It's a reasonable question. Billy, where should people start?
Yeah, I think just, starting with behaviours is like, so we in clinic, we often ask families the two things about behavioural problems. What's the most challenging thing that you're experiencing in your daily life as a family? That is often the priority, because families will come in and be like, there's 100 things, there's 20 things.
When you say that, Billy, do you mean specifically?
Yeah, I mean specifically.
Putting the kid in the car?
Yeah.
Getting them out of bed?
Getting out of the house in the morning is the hardest bit of our day. We dread it every morning.
But do you say like specifically physically getting them out or physically getting in the car? Like be really focused on one little thing?
I think it's more about what is the real pressure point for you guys as a family. And, and then we kind of, so the two things we ask is, we're either going to pick the most difficult thing, or if you guys are really drowning, we're going to pick an easy win. And the easy win is to then second step or two-step to the real priority. But you need to get some runs on the board first and go, we actually can achieve stuff. And the low-level stuff, like you might just be like, look, meal times is a real pain. Like that's our biggest pressure point. But we're actually finding that, brushing teeth is irritating, but it's probably an easy thing to address. And we'll have specific questions about these things coming up. But that's the two-step is that I always want the most challenging thing. People get used to it and just go, this is how life is. Getting out of the house is always going to be difficult. That's not true. So it is a reasonable expectation that you won't kind of have these pressure points in every day. But I think we grew up being like that. It was just for me and my brothers, there was like lots of shouting and chaos, and that was how it was. And it actually took me a long time to unlearn that and realise that actually that's not normal. And I shouldn't have that as a realistic expectation of what my family life will be like as me as a parent, because I got way more capacity than my mum does. I'm better informed. Like if I can't do this half decently, after all my capacity, my ability, all that stuff, but I still drown all the time. But I'm really good at reorientating to what the target is, and the target is not survive. Yeah. The target is that these things should be enjoyable and easy, and it should be an interaction that's fun and pleasant and all that stuff. Not all the time, but that's got to happen a lot of the time. And that's how I can gauge my metric. And we'll talk about this in some of the questions. But mate, I think you're really good at this. Like you're really good at kind of picking priorities. You're way better than I stretch myself every single day to the limit. And then we'll talk maybe in a future episode about like unhealthy ambition.
Yeah, you've got awesome capacity. I know what I can deliver, and it's not a lot on a lot of fronts.
No, but it's probably why you can be calm, and it's probably why you've got this beautiful hierarchy of like what's important to us as a family and all of that stuff. Yeah. Yeah, but you see success, mate. People are drawn to you because of that. Because that's you build a community. You live on a course. Everyone knows you. Like all of that stuff. Because you've picked where to start. Yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah, and just want to touch on one, Billy. You mentioned there about teeth brushing can be a real pressure point. Well, not if you don't grew up with them. So that's not medical advice.
One of the talks that I did this week was to all the paediatric dental specialists. I spoke to them yesterday, and they're like, one of the most powerful things that they do in clinic sometimes is tell kids they don't floss every day. And it's like a really powerful thing to connect, because we were talking about how we build relationships with kids and families about being genuine. And they were like, yeah, that's one of the really helpful things.
My partner's obsessed with getting teeth brushed and I'm not. So I can just imagine, she sort of asked me, she's like, I had put down go last night, she's out or something. You're like, yeah, good, teeth. Yeah, everything great. All right, let's move on. Like this question, Billy, let's move along. Billy, how many repetitions does it take to change a behaviour? Got a 4 and 2-year-old.
Yeah, so it's a great question, and we've talked about in the past the plan A, plan B. You get better at something by how frequently you succeed at plan A, which is the let's get better at this, let's skill development, not let's just get through it. You don't get better at like getting into the car without being a meltdown if you just pin them and go, I got to get there. You know what I mean?
Cover that one later.
Yeah. But, so but we often talk about it should be you should be seeing success within a month of any behavioural strategy that you're implementing. And we see lots of families that unfortunately have waited years to see us in clinic that I'll be like, how long have you been trying that strategy for? And they're like, years. And I'm like, is it working? And they're like, not sure. And I'm like, God. That's, you can't just sit in that perpetual, I hope one day this will pay off. You should see benefits. And as we've spoken about a lot, most common reason why you don't is the demand is too much, the stretch is too much of that kid or you as a family or whatever. So we've talked a lot about the theory about how we learn, how we pick up these skills, but you should be seeing it in that shorter period of time.
Yeah. We're asking them to dunk and they should be working on their layup.
Yeah, or dribbling the ball or just taking steps or getting excited about basketball. Do you know what I mean?
Turn up and play. Okay. Yeah, I like
sometimes
that.
you got to go that far back.
That far back.
Yeah. And you're going, how come you're not dunking? And the kid's like, I'm terrified to step on the court. So,
okay, good. You did well there.
Thank you.
Like Coach K. Coach K, I think he was really good at basketball coaching. Okay, anyway, Billy, I digress. Hey, Billy, whenever I say no or try a boundary, I get dad's a meanie. It's usually when my wife is there too.
Yeah, do you get that at all?
Aspects of. Not as in the moment, I would have heard that stuff for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I do. I get it. The reason that I included this one was included because I get it around bedtime, and it's really funny. It's because I flex on it. So I flex. I'll give an extra book. I'll do an extra face story. I'll sing an extra song, whatever it is. But then when I stop, she cracks it and is like, "I will just leave then," and stuff like that. And whereas Annalise never hears that because she's consistent. So it's them using their control of a situation because they have these vocabulary skills, but often don't have the empathy yet to understand that might be hurtful or might not feel nice. But they're like, "This is how I exert control. This is how I flex. I'm in a social relationship. I've got a connection with this person. I'm frustrated because you put a boundary up. And this is how I'm going to exert some control." And it's normal. It's completely normal. The trick is to not take it personally, and that's some of the thing that I struggle with. Like I tell Yvette 100 times a day without exaggerating, I love her. If she's annoyed at me, she'll be like, I don't love you.
Hey, just on that though, I'm trying to understand that. So similar dynamic in my house, right? Mum's pretty flexible. I'm pretty consistent, and it's pretty smooth when I do it. But it seems like Mum's being flexible and nice and doesn't get the benefit. Do you know what I mean? Like gets the...
Well, yeah, but you're confusing, that you just got two different goals. Like, the Henry is not failing compared to you if the metric is just being with my kids, enjoying them. It's just a different relationship. And whereas you'll have bits where your goal is, in that goal, you're not really about compliance. I know the type of parent you are. You're not like, listen to what I say and just do it.
No.
And Henry definitely isn't. So that's not her goal. Like she might sometimes be like, I wish they'd just do what I say immediately. But I know how Henry parents, and there's a lot of fun and connection in those moments, and that's why there's flex, and that's why there's pushback and all those things. They're safe. Because you're not like that. But the militant parent, often the dad, who's just like, I'm the law, I walk in and everyone goes quiet and then does exactly what I said and goes to bed and says thank you and whatever. Like none of us actually want to be that parent.
No.
Do you? Because you can very easily put yourself in the kid's shoes and go, I don't want to be afraid of my parents. I don't want to not have the ability to push back and be playful and all those things. It's just with certain things. Every family I meet is like I'm hopeless at boundaries. Every family I've ever met has elements that they're really good at about boundaries. Certain things like kids don't run out on the road. Do you know what I mean? Kids don't open the front door and run out the house. Kids are really careful with sharp objects, all of that stuff. It's just that where there's flex, where it's like brushing your teeth, bedtime, saying thank you, all that stuff, it's because we moved the boundary, and that's why kids test it all the time. But often it shows a safe relationship when they push back.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, because they're keen to engage, not just comply. Okay.
Yeah. We're going to spend an hour on the shorts, aren't we? Sorry.
I didn't want to say anything. You'll know when I go, we've both got a bit of a deadline, so it's like, this is it, bud. It's now a 3-part episode.
So we got past 4 of the shorts.
I looked at the clock before. Oh, truth, Billy. Hey, Billy, love it if you could. Oh, this person has said really quickly.
Answer in 5 words or less.
Love if you could cover more on not enjoying your child when they are challenging.
Yeah, definitely. So the trick there is that's often the time where it's impossible to enjoy our kids. So how do we balance it out? We see a lot of kids where, things are tough in relationships and they're like, what can I do so this pressure point is easier? And I'm like, that'll be the last place that gets easier. You've got to have the joy and the connection and the unconditional positive regard in all the other times. The last place that thing gets easier is
that moment.
In that moment. So that's the trick, is that making sure that you're not expecting that when things are tough, you're stressed, you're drowning, you're trying to get them out the door. You're like, this should be enjoyable.
Billy, is the super nanny onto something with her technique? Asking for a friend. What's her technique? I don't know what it is.
Yeah, well, it's before our time, but as in before our parenting time. It was obviously, I don't think we were watching it much as however old we were. But yeah, it's really interesting because we're trying to think about like the social enterprise that sits above this podcast is trying to think about how we can use different forms of media and thinking about this. And that was one that was kind of prevalent back then. The criticism of her is that she used a lot of punishment and a bit of shame, where she'd make kids sit on the naughty step or the naughty seat or something like that was some of the stuff she used to do.
Like the 80s.
Yeah, exactly. So she was good because she was like directing to more better behaviours, which is kind of what we'll talk about in the previous part 1 episode, but that's some of the criticism, and I think we can do better than that. So I've never found a benefit in any of the however many kids I've met in 20 plus years of punishment or shame.
Punitive.
Yeah, and consequence is different. But anyway.
Explaining consequence is different.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll keep rolling.
I do want to come back to that one. I love that one when you run through that one. Anyway, hey, Billy, what can you do when you attempt to set your kid up for success, but they self-sabotage?
Yeah, so very quickly, self-sabotage is usually a sign that control trumps doing the right thing. So what that means is the kid wants to be in control. They want to predict the outcome. So the kid in the classroom, the kid in the family that feels a bit uncomfortable is like, if I do this, I know what will happen. Even if I blow up, they'll get angry at me, but I can predict the outcome. And there's a lot of safety in that. And it's feeling safe trumps being compliant, doing the right thing, being told you're a good boy. Does that make sense?
Wow. Yep.
Yeah, so that's most adults do it as well. Adults will self-sabotage. The classic,
exactly.
We've all got friends where like, every relationship fails a couple of months in because they self-sabotage because it's just too hard to open up the box of what if this actually goes deeper. And that's classic self-sabotage, seeking control.
Oh my God. I never understood what self-sabotage meant, and that makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Because you're owning,
I
you got control. Yeah, ditto.
Yeah.
Oh, let's keep going. Billy, solo parenting a lot, no village, so hard to stay regulated all the time. How?
Yeah, drop. So you can't change, your capacity. And I relate to this. Like, I got a phenomenal partner, but she just works crazy hours. So I do a lot of time on my own with the kids, and I don't, a lot of the time, like, I just need to get to bedtime, and it's not that I'm not enjoying them and stuff. It's just I'm well beyond my capacity. And so how can we drop the demand? And we did this last night, mate. We just, the kids we're trying as hard as we can to get healthy food into them, but we were like, we actually haven't just enjoyed the kids together. So Annalise rolled in, there was a bit of sunlight left, and I just went, let's just roll into the park for 15 minutes. And Evie just climbed over logs, and we just played a game in like fairy forest or wherever it was with the dog tied to me, and I was carrying Charlie, and Evie and Annalise just like balanced on logs, and it was like we just reheated some food and that was dinner.
How good.
So because we were like, yeah, that's actually more important.
Good
than
memories?
Whether they have veggies and stuff. Yeah. We take photos and we enjoy it. And Evie names the forest and there's a big narrative around it and all that stuff. But it's 15 minutes. That's the time we had yesterday, which is rare. But we got a weeknight where Annalise got home, was a bit of sunlight left, and we just went, cool, let's just go out into the park and just spend 15 minutes walking around and balancing on logs. And that's the hardest bit, is that you've got to actually have the ability to do that.
Okay.
But really tough. But we should do one on how to build villages as well, because it's really important.
How to build villages. Sorry, yes.
Yeah. But yeah, it is, because all those traditional villages have kind of fallen.
Yep. Sorry, just picturing us, you and me building a village. Sorry.
Yeah.
Silly.
One of the many things we don't have skills in.
Do not have any. Yeah. Hey, Billy, I have a 2-year-old who won't stop picking her nose. She always has her finger in there.
It's made me think of The Simpsons. The doctor said my nose would stop bleeding if I keep my finger out.
Ralph. Valentine's Day.
Yeah. It's such a classic. One of my favourite Simpsons quotes. Yeah, so it's really interesting because it's always like everything function doesn't matter. It's really common that 2-year-olds do this, but it's actually a good example of how do we use kind of things like operant conditioning to be like, hey, we're all working on this, and blowing your nose instead. Remember, like, hands don't go in the nose, whatever. And then you just instantly reinforce it and praise it. We're all getting good at this, aren't we? Oh, you're doing so well. Instead of, hey, stop doing that. Because, yeah, it's just...
The stop. You got to direct them to what you want,
Yeah.
right? That's what I've been focusing on the last couple of months.
Yeah.
Can't
Amazing.
say, well, no. Yes, thank you. But, like, I see there's a lot of power in that one. Like,
Yeah.
it's so...
There's just no guidance in no or something.
There's no guidance in no, that's right.
There's nowhere
So you
to go
can't,
with it.
There's nowhere to go. It's like, stop.
Mm.
I'd still yell it out when there's hitting.
Yeah.
It's hard in that moment. I know you're saying, no, you've missed the moment. I get, but you got to stop that.
Yeah,
But
no.
I do focus a lot on, hey, you know, it'd be better if you did this.
Yeah, totally. And if I ever get to the longs, we'll see some more.
All right. Okay, Billy, last 2 shorts, everyone. Like, I'm not talking to an audience. Well, I am, but there's no one here. Anyway.
Will be one day, mate.
Americana. Here we come, Brazil. Hey, Billy, when you get past the point of being able to self-regulate as a parent, what is the best option?
Yeah. So, yeah, safety. And you just think safety, push through. You know, if you can walk away from those spaces. The most important trick in that is just being aware of it. That happens to me nearly every day. I'll have a point where I'm just like completely overwhelmed, and I'll have like Charlie in my arms squirming out, like Melfi's jumping all over me and Evie's getting upset at me about something, and I'm just like, cool, I'm well beyond myself, and I just get lost in it. But what I try and do is just check myself and be like, cool, this is what's happening. I don't ask anything of myself. I don't be like, well, sort it out, like, you know, get down on Evie's level, do some good co-regulation with her, whatever. I'm just like, my first step is just going, cool, this is what's happening for me. Because otherwise, I just keep taking off with it.
I did a walk away last night, Billy.
Yeah. Nice.
Just walking in the other room. Just needed one.
Yeah, totally.
At a classical, dinner time pressure point.
Yeah.
You know, everyone's just leaving the table when they want and food's everywhere, and I'm like...
What's your move? Scream into a pillow?
Well...
like, pick up the plate.
I lay on the bed for a second and then, like, usually, grab my phone, and then there's something about parenting and, like, how precious these years are, so I put the phone down and walk back out and I go, all right, girls, I'm back.
No.
Dad's back. Literally what happened. I was like, God, it got me.
Is it in how to focus ginger guy that's...
I usually go to Pop Culture Parenting Instagram and just get my fill and come back.
Yeah, wow. That is quite the loop that you're in.
It's a real treadmill, Billy. Billy, last short. Nick, do you feel like Collingwood has changed its behaviour for the worse?
I had to end on that.
Yeah.
For overseas listeners, it's an AFL footy team that Nick is very passionate about.
That haven't started the season well, Billy. So we've lost our first 2 games.
Yeah.
I have no response.
Onwards and upwards.
Onwards and upwards, yeah. We'll win tonight. I'm excited. Billy, it's a long time. For those of you first-time listeners, we had the part 1 episode last week on the topic. We break it out. For the second part, which is what you're listening to right now, this is where we go into the long, more complex questions. So we go polls, we go short questions, which are really common questions, and then we go into more complex, longer questions. And this week got a couple of feedback posts as well. So we started to include those because, yeah, shout out to you guys that actually like dial in and go, hey, actually, I did this week based on what you said and it worked. So,
Yeah.
yeah, just to sort
beautiful.
of, instead of hearing just from you and me.
Yeah. I mean, I think the part twos are amazing because of what people send in as questions. But yeah, it's amazing when people send in. We'll end on some really great advice from a mental health clinician that sent it in as well. But yeah, some feedback, a couple of bits.
Let's kick it off, guys. Gents, just wanted to tell you about an experience we had in the supermarket today. My older boy, 3, is going through a painful process of dropping his nap, so midday can get pretty dicey depending on the previous 24 hours. It's been a challenging time for all of us, testing a lot of patience. Today, I took my son to the shops to get some fruit for morning tea, and he was getting a bit silly, changing his mind constantly, wanting this, that, refusing to walk, etc. I was using all my skills from the podcast to validate, empathise, co-regulate and stay patient. There was also a little bit of bargaining. A lady stopped us and just said, I just wanted to say, you're a wonderful father. It really made my day, and I definitely wouldn't have been coping as well without pop culture parenting, so thank you for all your work.
Yeah, amazing. God, I love hearing that stuff. Makes all of it worth it. And I think the other reason I included that one was because that's a really important thing for people to hear, and we have the opportunity to tell others around us how good they are in their parenting efforts and how much we can see them doing that, because a lot of people never hear it. A lot of people are meeting clinic.
Positive reinforcement.
So, yeah, beautiful stuff.
Beautiful. Another one. Hey, guys, love the episode this week. Hate to say this, but I could shockingly relate to Billy's Griswold. I have a beautiful 3-year-old and a 5-month-old at home, and also a very energetic 6-year-old golden retriever. The dog has rolled in poo, eaten the kids' poo, amongst other wonderful things. Always seems to do it when I'm at the wit's end too. The other day, I had both kids home sick and Harvey hadn't been for a decent walk. My canine companion then found a gap in the fence line and ran away. I could hear all the commotion and barking, but for a solid 2 minutes I just chose to ignore it, thinking life might actually be a lot easier if he ran away. Anyway, I came to my senses and went out and chased the dog from down the street, pulling him back, basically kicking and screaming. Maybe an episode on dogs with toddlers should be a future catalogue. Haha, love your work.
Can I just say that person speaks to my soul? Because
Feel
I've never
seen,
connected more with a listener than that person. So, yeah, and it's moments like that, and I have those moments as well. But yeah, it's really important that we actually call. That's why the Griswolds exist, because there's got to be a bit more honesty about how hard this can be sometimes and some of the fleeting thoughts that we have about it.
Fleeting thoughts.
Yeah, and lots of advice about the dog. So I really appreciate everyone. And she's gorgeous, but often my tipping point. So amazing. Now
Longs, Billy. Kia ora. Short-term listener, first-time caller, just found your podcast in the new year after doom scrolling on Instagram. Needless to say, the best find of 2024. FTM with a full-time mum. Yes, full-time mum with a 9-month-old boy who loves a bit of science, but also maybe a bit panicky about being a boy mum. A question: is it possible to change behaviours or associations for your young ones? 9-month-old. Simple things like changing clothes results in screaming the house down. Tried playing games, talking it through, lots of smiles, singing and cuddles, a positive reinforcement. I realise this is completely normal behaviour, but it would be nice to retain my hearing and make the little experiences like this one more enjoyable for all. Love your potty and really appreciate the time both of you put into making our worlds a better place. Keep it up.
Yeah, so this is a really important bit, and you taught me some of this actually, but I remember this window with Evie, and I'm way better with Charlie because he's in it now, about some of those pressure points when you're like changing a nappy, putting an outfit on, all that stuff, and it's just, you're like, oh man, and then you start dysregulating with them. And I remember a beautiful thing you said, stretch the outfit, not the kid. And it's a really important point about, like, obviously practically, but I think as well, like, so what I do is on the change table, what I noticed was that I was like, quick, getting up there, tense, we've got to go. And so every time we were on the change table, it was stress, it was pressure, it was got to be quick. I'm kind of shoving your limbs into stuff. So what I actually do with Charlie, because I learnt the hard way with Evie, is I just take 30 seconds to just have some positive interaction in that space so that I'm taking away, I'm uncoupling that association with, and this is what we talked about with classical conditioning. It's not like you're on this change table, I'm going to be shoving your limbs into stuff, I'm going to be pressing you down to change the nappy. All that stuff has to happen as well. Nice. But I also blow on his tummy and all that stuff. And I've noticed that he's had a way easier time with that stuff because I learnt the hard way. I had to undo it all with Evie. So just some of those moments thinking about when are those things.
When you know it's going to be tough.
Yeah, and how do I uncouple that association with this is always a bad thing. Mealtimes is the same for us. Annalise and I have worked really hard to make mealtimes a fun thing, and we remembered last night actually when we were eating this reheated stuff, we were throwing back. I used to do this little Lego performance that all these Lego people would come up and cheer Evie on about how she was eating and how much fun food was and all this stuff, but we don't have to do that anymore. But in a really tough pocket where she was going through that autonomy window of wanting to be in control, what I had to do was make it an enjoyable experience because we were just hitting a wall with meals.
Spending that 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's just really important because then it changes your frame as well. So you're not going in going, I just really need to quickly get this nappy done. There'll be times you need to, but you'll undo it by the times you can be actually, I'm just going to take 30 seconds here.
Yeah. It's probably a better tactic than the old faceplate because let me tell you, I've done a few faceplates in the time.
What's the faceplate?
Oh, you make a face out of the carrots and the cucumber and the noodle hair and all that jazz.
The trick is how much is your heart in it because kids can tell. So if your heart's not really...
I'll be really honest, I've never actually done one. Mum makes a bunch of them and I'm not sure how well they go over. So, I mean, so...
So, yeah, maybe your heart's not totally in that strategy.
No, it's not really. Let's keep moving, Billy. Different parents. Hey gang, attempting to finally ask a question relevant to this week's topic. Absolutely love what you're doing. Just got to remember to not listen on my way into work as I'm usually almost in tears thinking how I messed up every fortnight. There's a new chance each day. How do I manage resulting behaviours from identical tasks, only the behaviours are the same depending on which combo of parents are present? Wife and I are not separated, but we have irregular work shifts. She's a nurse, I'm in sales. Eldest daughter, now diagnosed with ADHD, reacts completely differently depending on the combo of parents. Just me equals stubborn but compliant. Mum and I equals very difficult. Ignore direction if she listens at all. Just mum equals straight up aggressive, runs off or screams. It's so difficult to try and build a routine and get good outcomes when the result is so different depending on which parent is around. I should also note our youngest daughter acts in a similar way. Mum and I have very similar parenting styles. Love to you both for what you do.
Yeah, amazing question. It's a phenomenal question. So the child, we talked about this already this app, but the child feels comfortable pushing back harder against mum. So he's running off, screaming, all that stuff, really expressing frustration and emotions. Doesn't feel like that with dad. Is more compliant but stubborn. Neither of them are successful though, are they?
No.
And then she's lost when both of them are there because she doesn't know which strategy to use.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
So with mum, she's comfortable to push back, scream, express everything.
Is that good that she's comfortable to push back, scream, express?
It is, but the interesting thing the amazing thing about this question is none of the three options are successful currently.
Gotcha.
Are they?
No,
you
three
can tell
combos,
those,
none of them work.
Yeah, none of them are working. Even the compliance, you can tell this parent is not it's perfect with me. Do you know what I mean? They're saying, the dad is saying, it doesn't work with me either. So the trick is that you've got to realise that none of the three options are working and change it up and be actually, how do we drop back the expectation and actually succeed in interaction and being on the same team, the same page as this kid? How do we do the alley-oop on low level as individual parents first? So the last place you'll nail the alley-oop is when she's navigated successfully the one-on-one interaction with each parent, and then she's not lost when both of them are there because she just doesn't know which strategy to use.
So work on your one-on-one.
But there's a third strategy because she's got the dad strategy of stubbornness but compliance. She's got the mum strategy of avoidance and big emotions. She's lost when they're both there. So there's got to be another strategy, which is we're on the same page here. We're trying to achieve this thing together as individual parents first.
How might they do it?
So you look at it and go, what's the specific task? You open up a conversation and dialogue. This is the thing we're focusing on this week. We're focusing on, I'm just making this up.
Let's just do mealtime.
Yeah,
Pick
we're
mealtime.
focusing on mealtime. How can we make this? The trick with mealtimes is that we get stuck in a battle, like mealtimes, bedtimes, toileting in younger years, but even in older kids, the mealtime and bedtimes can get really tough. What we've got to remember is that we're on the same page, and we do this with Evie as well. Like we will sometimes, have a reinforcer. If we can achieve something, we will all do this thing, but we never go, well, you don't get it. We go, it's fine. We didn't get it this time, but tomorrow we're going to have another shot at it, and we'll all get the reinforcer. I don't separate the kid out and be like, and I also don't use blame and shame. We'll have another crack at it tomorrow. So I think picking the specific things and being like, this is what we've decided, the kid's level of ability and articulation of vocabulary and understanding should have an input on how much autonomy they have on what the thing is picked and what the strategy will be. And then you're all doing it together. And it's not, not signaling them out, but we're in partnership. It's a really important thing about behavioural strategies. And that goes to the highest level of learning that we talked about, the fourth one, that cognitive skill development component. That is, I'm going to utilise your abilities and my abilities, our power to put our ability to put our powers together to achieve this outcome, and we're doing it together. And you have to really believe that. If you're like, we're doing it together, but hey, you better pull this off, that's not a true alley-oop, is it?
No.
It's like, how am I really on? But you're great at this, mate. You're like, you walk beside the girls when you're trying to help them with something physically, but you're mentally and psychologically right next to them as well. You're never putting pressure on them. You're never opposing them. You're never threatening them. But you can get stuck in those bad habits ourselves. We get caught in those ruts, and often we have to pull ourselves out of the rut before we pull the kid out of the rut. Does that make sense? Because you get caught up in your expectation. You just go, this is my move when they're pissing me off or they're not listening or they're doing that thing, and you're setting the kid up to fail because you're asking them to do something in conflict that they can't achieve, and then they just get comfortable as well, going, cool, this is a battle. And stepping away from the battle before and going, how do I sort this out? What does this strategy look like? What are we actually hoping to achieve here? What are we actually trying to guide them towards? And then what's my role in setting them up to nail this? It's a really important change up. But it's a beautiful question because it just shows the kid is stuck. The kid is stuck in two dysfunctional ways of operating and succeeding with the relationship with each parent, and then she's completely lost when both of them are there.
Okay.
So it's really important we parent different. It's really important that we're consistent and predictable in specific things that we're trying to achieve with kids.
Cool. Hey guys, I'm a huge fan of the pod and love what you and Nick are doing for the kids around the country. After listening to the most recent episode, I have one question that kept coming up for me as it was based on a situation at work. We have a student who's displayed severe escalation of behaviour based on a high level of anger. He constantly repeats same behaviours, chasing students, yelling, kicking doors, trying to fight other students. Whenever something happens that he thinks is unfair, it is related to his previous school where he was seen as a perpetrator during every incident. He also doesn't want us to contact home as he receives severe punishments when school calls and his feelings are not validated or acknowledged. What would you suggest we do to support? We are checking in with him, and I am playing sport with him and his mates at recess to build pro-social behaviour, and we have been celebrating his success each day.
So give him a leadership role where he decides what the rules are. He decides how that was chosen, how it's kind of monitored, how it's supported, how it's guided. Harness it in him.
You did that, didn't you, with that kid back in Frankston?
Yeah. So that's why that question made it. So his skill deficit, focus on it by giving him a positive pathway, a positive experience, a leadership role within it. And say, mate, we want you to be a part of helping all of us as a school achieve these things. You're going to specifically help us build the plan. I'm going to have a partnership in one of the leadership educators around. You guys are going to put together and you're going to come around, and what you're actually giving him is an opportunity to have empathy, flexibility, how to understand the other perspective, what are actually healthy strategies to deal with conflict, all of that stuff. But give him a leadership role. It's a really important strategy.
Yep. Awesome.
Yeah. So instead of hitting a wall with it and saying you need to get better at this, you can almost covertly say, we're going to get you better at this by showing you how good you are at it, but giving you the support required for you to succeed, and focus on it that way. It's a strength-based approach. So, yeah, but anyway.
I say it every episode, you're very good at this.
Yeah.
You're very good at this. Billy, boys, where do I begin? I feel like it should come with a mandatory, boys, where do I begin? I feel like it should be mandatory to get given a QR code to your podcast as you exit the hospital doors. We are given the login to Reading Eggs, but we are never taught or even offered support to and around dealing with our own emotions and then parenting on top of that. Your podcast has been an encyclopedia for me, especially navigating primary school with my oldest 7-year-old. You've taught my family the term awkward and been instrumental in both my husband and my knowledge and support around best skilling ourselves at supporting him. The newest episode literally aired as I'd received multiple phone calls, emails from my son's primary school. He has always been our heart-forward kid. That's a really good line for a kid. He's the most affectionate, empathetic and gorgeous boy. Huge emotions are always his biggest challenge and yet his biggest strength. We've known they are hard to navigate at school, but have never been a big problem. The last week, his outbursts at school have become uncontrolled, violent and unmanageable. Refusal to go back into the class has escalated, hissing, yelling, and every ounce of anger from the last 7 years of his life have just erupted. He's never been a child who is physically forward. In his 7 years, I think we've said bye to one toy becoming broken. It's just not him. I stood at the bottom of the staircase in his school, surrounded by teachers, his peers, looking up at him, left shaken to my core, thinking, this isn't my kid. Every day it's a new email, phone call, removal from class is always the answer. I live in fear of the phone ringing. It's 10:30. Do I have to pick it up? Has he had an outburst yet? Should I just give up my business so I can just continuously be there? There's a lot of moving parts that add to the situation, but in the end, we've concluded it's the fact that he doesn't feel heard, understood, and that no matter what he is not heard and doesn't feel comfortable voicing what's happened to him. We have a psychologist now involved, which has just given us some sort of peace and understanding, yet is being used as a tool from the school to assess him so we can figure out what's going on with him. But my question after all this is how? How do you continue to show up when your boy turns to you and says, I did the wrong thing, you should just take me to jail. I shouldn't be part of this family anymore because I can't control my big emotions. How do you navigate communicating the fact that it's wrong to threaten a kid, that you'll hit him because he pushed you over and it hasn't been addressed by the staff? How do you walk the line of punishment when it's a flat out no, I don't want to go to the supermarket, I'm not going, no, you can leave me here, no one loves me anyway, I don't need to eat. In the week that's been, I don't know who's cried more, me or him. How do you advocate for the emotions that are all of a sudden so negative, anger-driven and hurtful when you're being put on the spot about hours of interaction you're not part of? When your own belief as being the best parent you can be is shot to hell, how do you stand tall and confident to defend the one your heart lives for and yet be breaking all at the same time? I'm so sorry. I 100% don't aim to be this long-winded. It's been a big 12 days and counting. Sorry and thank you for just creating the space for a lost mum and dad to try and find the footing, direction, laughs and comfort.
Yeah, tough stuff, isn't it?
That's so tough.
So just like mum is lost, he is lost. He doesn't feel safe and secure. His alarm system and anxiety is triggering the whole time. It's fractured his relationships and his self-esteem. And so the emotional sensitivity that he has that has made him vulnerable to this experience is also the pathway out of it. Lean into his emotional sensitivity and connect with him and show him, don't tell him, show him that you are unconditionally there for him. Wherever he goes, you'll go. Whatever comes through the door, you'll face it with him. That takes a lot of time and energy and effort, and making sure that as much as possible you prioritise that over everything else. And whatever it is, like I've been doing a few talks lately on kind of kids who are struggling to attend school, because we're seeing, still from what's happened years ago, still a lot of kids are struggling, but it always starts with the relationship. You have to prioritise the relationship over everything else, and then you will be able to try and understand what has caused it. Something is causing this. Remembering that, objectively we might be like, this kid is safe and secure in this school, but his subjective experience trumps it. Like, we often think that our subjective perception of the world is inferior to what's actually happening, but it actually trumps it because all the emotion is behind it. And trying to validate the experience that he's having, connect with him, show him, this mum knows that all those things that he's saying are what he's feeling, but show him that it's not true, that you actually are unconditionally there for him. He's an integral part of this family.
Got a question you won't be able to answer. But what could be going off this kid? Why is his alarm system so fired up?
So what he's done is he's regressed. So he's probably regressed back to years and years of he's had this build in confidence, in emotional capacity and everything. But what happens is, and we know this, the amazing Bruce Perry and Tina Bryson and Dan Siegel, showed us that what happens is that when kids experience these negative emotions, they lose their functioning and higher capacity. So you have to bring back their capacity from an emotional perspective first. You can't use logic. You need to lose connection. You need to drop their alarm system. You need to show them that they're safe and secure, they're unconditionally loved. You will always be there from them, how much they enrich your lives throughout the day, all of that stuff before you can re-access their cognitive abilities and their logic and their thinking about things. So he's just gone right back. That's what's happened. And he's just been doing that over the last 12 days or whatever because he's so overstimulated and so emotionally dysregulated.
Do you try and keep him in school, Billy?
If you can, but I'd speak to school and be like, what's a way of him being here, interacting here that's actually a positive experience for him, because that's how he'll be safe and secure.
Comes in for recess or something like that?
Yeah, he's just doing something, like we've talked about a lot. Give him a role, give him an ability to feel like he's part of that community, he's valued, all of that stuff.
Yep.
But it'll be really low expectations at the moment. But what a phenomenal parent.
Amazing. Tough. Well done. Hey, Billy and Nick. Thank you for your amazing and valuable insights. I listen to your podcast constantly. As a teacher and mother of small children, I am with kids the majority of the day, and listen to your podcast is calming, reaffirming and humbling. It changes how I interact with my students and kids for the better. As a teacher, I loved the latest episode. The theories of learning are well known to me. I've always taken certain approaches with my children who are now 6 and 3. However, with the 6-year-old now at school, the social learning theory is in full force, but it's not always in a positive way. We're seeing a regression in their behaviour as being a bit on the immature side. They are attracted to other kids who are a little the same. My question is, how do I manage this without taking away his autonomy to choose who he hangs out with, and also the opportunity to learn how to have friends without actually becoming them, picking up their behaviours?
I included this because you do this very well.
Yeah, go on.
And my mum did it well as well, actually.
What do I do?
You become a part of the other kids' lives as well.
Okay.
So invest in the other kids, invest in their friendships. You have an observation then of what activities they're doing, what is the social learning influence, like what are the behaviours, what are they preferencing, but then you can steer and guide them as well. So you set them up. And I know you're good at this. You have a really positive influence on, especially Winnie's mates. You're a positive role model in their lives. You've got good eyesight on how they're going. You build their capacity. You build their confidence. You help them in their skill development socially. That's how you do it. And my mum did this as well. Ours was the house everyone came to, and it was so she had good eyesight on it. Now, I was hanging out with some pretty shady people. It didn't always work, but I think it was the safest way to do it. And she had influence. She was a positive influence. A lot of my good mates, some of them who I always feel a bit uncomfortable, listen to this. They were like, we can't understand the words I'm saying. Her Irish accent was so strong. But then they became like, she would speak at their weddings and all that stuff. And it didn't always work. Like one of those kids robbed our house twice, like as a 17-year-old. And it's really hard, but I think it's an important thing to think about. Like, how do I be a part of these kids' life, especially the younger years? Because it gets really hard when they get into mid-teens and they actually don't want to be around you because they're really testing out their independence and they're practicing being an adult.
Yep.
So as early on as possible, be a part of your kids' friends' lives as well, because then you can have a positive contribution to it as well. That's how you influence social learning theory.
Okay. Thanks, Billy. We're going to keep trucking. Hey, guys. Hope all is well in your world. I could definitely use some help in mine. I realise you guys usually ask for emails in relation to your current topic, but I hope it's okay for sending in this random one. I just discovered your podcast last week and have been absolutely consuming it. I work 13-hour shifts at a factory, so it gives me a lot of time to binge podcasts. But I'm still only on episode 30. So,
it's phenomenal.
Which I actually went back and listened to around this patch recently, Billy. I listened to the anxiety ones. So I think I know where this question might be coming from. But I'm still only episode 30. So if you respond to this on an episode, I probably won't hear it for a while. Okay. I'm a dad to an amazing 4-year-old boy. He's my entire world, and I'm trying to do the best I can for him. Recently, he has started saying things like, I'm stupid, nobody likes me, I'm a bad boy. This is absolutely crushing to hear from the young kiddo's mouth. Neither my partner or myself have ever said these things to him. So we aren't exactly sure where this is coming from. We have told him that an action was bad, but we have started to work on changing the narrative like you talk about on a lot of your episodes. He isn't a bad boy, but he does have some anger issues or big feelings, generally speaking. I think this is part of this is in part or maybe even fully my fault. I come from an extremely broken home full of violence and anger. I witnessed gun violence, which resulted in the death in my family at the age of 4, and then was raised by my abusive father. I've never gotten therapy or talked to anyone about this. As a result, I have also have a very bad temper and have a hard time regulating my emotions. I feel like I'm failing my little guy. I've never been violent towards him or anyone that he's ever seen, but I still think he's absorbed my trauma. Mum seems to think he's picked up a lot of these words from TV. We have been very lenient on what shows we allow him to watch. We have pulled back a lot and really limit what he's watching now. I'm not sure what you can do to help through email, but I thought it was worth a shot. Even if it's just a list of episodes to listen to, I'd appreciate it. I just wanted my little bub to have some relief and not grow up with all the hang-ups that I struggle with on a daily basis. Thanks for what you do, guys. It means a lot and it's a huge help for me. P.S. I realise I should go to therapy, but I have a hard time justifying spending the money. Things are tight in our house and therapy in America is extremely expensive.
Yeah, so what a phenomenal parent.
Amazing.
I'm always amazed when people listen to so much of it so quickly and go back to the start. As we say, we've intentionally made it evergreen. We did a topic on this in parental mental health. It is important to recognise the priority, though, is your own mental health, and it's easy for me to say. It's hard if you're like, I can't prioritise that or I don't have the money. But we meet a lot of families in clinic that are like, my mental health will be fine once my kids sort it out, but actually the reverse order is true. You need to sort out your own mental health first because you're the primary safety net. This is a phenomenal parent who's experienced really severe developmental trauma and that needs to be addressed. Now, you might argue, well, the only way to address it is to go and pay a lot of money to see a specialist. Like, I don't do adult stuff, I do kid stuff. But actually, like with the podcast and what we're trying to do, a lot of people, you can educate yourself around this. You've just got to use really high quality sources of people that are really well trained in this stuff and kind of exploring what is the way that you can heal from this stuff. The Body Keeps the Score is a phenomenal book. The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog is a phenomenal book. Like going and reading out on that stuff. We will do more topics on this. He might catch up to us eventually. And
I think we have to email him back the link to be
Totally. I know I'm trying so hard to get back to emails and messages. But yeah, so it's a really important piece, though, about just show him that that's not true. Show him who he really is, the power of the narrative, the positive regard, all that stuff. Keep doing what you're doing, but address your own mental health needs as well. It's the hardest thing I have in clinic is to convince parents that their own mental health is actually a priority.
Yep.
So really important stuff. But we'll do a future topic on it as well.
Okay, cool. Hey guys, another super helpful and relevant episode. At the school where I work, we are going through a lot of changes and need to implement something school-wide to support student behaviour in the yard. Billy, do you have any examples of school-wide approach to changing students' behaviour, or some examples of schools that are doing some great things in this space? Behaviours you need to change, opting for physical violence to solve problems, inappropriate language, disrespect towards teachers, self and each other. Where do we start?
Yeah, heaps of examples of schools. One of the best things I get to do is go and visit schools and learn about how they built communities. And I'm sure if this person is reaching out, they're doing this too. But what you want to do is the first step before a plan is having a conversation and opening up a dialogue with the entire school community about what the priorities are. So you have to do that. A lot of the time there's like off-the-shelf tools that are purchased, sometimes for a lot of money, that they say this is what we're going to do for our strategy. The problem is, does that actually suit the community? Is that their preference? Does it actually capture all of the cultural strengths that exist around you? Does it utilise the priorities and abilities and all that stuff? And sometimes it doesn't. I don't know if I've said this on the pod. I recently had this really cool story about a kid that I met in clinic maybe 2 weeks ago, so probably not, who's really struggling in the school community, lots of behavioural difficulties, but she's really creative. So anyway, what the school has done is she's gone around and built all these posters about what the priorities are for the school, and they've utilised her strengths for her to feel like she's contributing to the community, to actually be the communicator of what are priorities to us as a school. So she walks around that school now and sees her own artwork is influencing how they all feel about each other. Phenomenal stuff. The other trick is you have to be really genuine about it. You can't say we have a zero tolerance to bullying. And a lot of schools every school has zero tolerance to bullying. Lots of schools are experiencing bullying. So you can't. You've got to go, actually, this is a real priority. This is hurting our community. It's putting a lot of strain on our educators. How do we actually genuinely act out what we're talking about, what we say is a priority and all that stuff? And that's the trick. Sometimes schools do too much. We're going to hear a question where there's just too much going on at a school soon. And it's really important that we kind of realise we've got to drop the expectation and build the strengths of our community and open up discussions. And I've been really lucky to be a part of that at some really disadvantaged schools that just do a phenomenal job of capturing the voice of everyone in the community and thinking what's important to us. How do we signal that to everyone? How do we tell stories about it? And how do we make sure that we're all actually accountable for doing it?
Just practically speaking then, have you seen these schools of how they actually gather up and build the priority? Like, do they do like assemblies they send out, like polls to parents, or like what? Seen any good tactics along the way?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So you build relationships with leadership that are outside of the community, outside the school, that are within the community. So I've got a phenomenal guy that like works for the police, and he has a relationship with all of the schools, and he knows, so that he's got his finger on the pulse. The leadership at the school do, and they say these kids are kicking off, and then he comes in to support them, not as punishments, not as consequences. He goes, how can I help this family outside of the school grounds? How do we utilise all the things that exist in the school? There's a soccer club that's got an amazing coach down the road. He should be a part of what we're doing at school, so that there's consistency, so that we got pathways. Like a lot of the kids that I see, it's not the medication or the diagnosis I give. It's actually saying, hey, I've heard of someone in your community that does this phenomenal stuff, and you're going to take them under their arm. So yeah, how do you do that? You've got to just bring everyone in, and often it starts with leadership. There are very few families that don't have a single person that they trust in the community. You've just got to find that person for the vulnerable families, because then their voice can be elevated and heard. They might not feel comfortable saying that to school. They might not feel comfortable coming to the parent night and the assembly where you talk about this stuff. But how do you think about who's everyone in this community that might be capturing them, might make them feel safe to be heard in this space?
Gotcha. Okay. Thanks, Billy. Hey, Dr. Billy and Nick. I wanted to thank you for your podcast and the skills you're sharing on the platform. I have just shared your podcast with many teachers and friends. I work in an all-boys school for students aged between grade 2 and 10 with complex behavioural difficulties. The school primarily supports boys with ADHD and ASD that have fallen through the cracks of mainstream schooling. I have a bit of a tricky question. One of my students, aged 15, is technology obsessed. This has led to total meltdowns in the classroom when he has been asked to finish up with the tech. From smashing windows to trashing the room and targeting staff, there has been instances where he is so dysregulated it has become unsafe, and police and ambulance have been called. It seems to go like this. Issue with a peer, jump on tech, it becomes like a zombie and totally unresponsive. Everyone backs right off, knowing what he's capable of. He gets out of completing any other activities or engaging in school, or technology is taken away, massive outburst that puts his safety and the safety of others at risk. We've tried so many strategies, including establish clear guidelines for technology used in the classroom to reduce dependencies on device, offer a variety of engaging non-tech activities to keep him occupied and stimulate, helping staff, Lego, craft, building, intervene early with calming strategies like Lego or fidget toys, offer him choices and autonomy in tasks to prevent agitation, maintain a calm and supportive demeanour to avoid escalating emotions, ensure interactions with him are positive and empowering to prevent panic or negative feelings, create a designated calm down space equipped with sensory tools for him to regulate his emotions, use positive reinforcement techniques to encourage appropriate behaviour and demonstrate school values. I guess my short question is, how do you change behaviour when the child seems to know they have total control over a situation, as they know you are aware of the level of violence they can resort to if they don't get their way? He's such a brilliant kid, so I was interested in your perspective on the situation. Thanks again, and I apologise for the long explanation. You guys are brilliant.
Yeah, amazing. And I see a lot of these kids in clinic. So the tech isn't the problem, his emotional regulation is. So it's not a tech solution. It's not a screen time gaming problem. It's an emotional regulation problem. And so that's why all the strategies that are around tech are probably setting him up to fail a bit, because he's just not capable to succeed in emotionally regulating when tech's involved. And like we've talked about a lot, that'll be the last place that he can actually pull off the emotional regulation, because it's too overstimulating for him. He struggles too much to disconnect, and that's why he's reusing a successful strategy. He's got a negative coercion cycle pattern where he's going into battle every time, and he uses the fact that he can escalate to violence as a way to succeed in getting what he wants, so he's more likely to do that. So trying to reduce any opportunity for that to happen, and there'll be a tech component to that. One really amazing thing, that there's a guy who has a company called Game Aware, Andrew, and I've done some PD with him before.
What's PD?
Professional development, where just about how, and we know a lot of people want that kind of gaming app, which we'll figure out how to do somehow. But he talks about stopwatches instead of timers, and it's a really important strategy about a lot of the, you've got 20 minutes and you count it down with the kid. Kids hate that. A lot of kids really hate it. Evie's even the same. Like, stop counting, I'll be swinging. I'll be like 10 more swings. And she hates it because it kind of puts this pressure and negative spin on it. This thing you're really enjoying is about to end. And so that's, whenever we do that, we set kids up to really emotionally dysregulate. And that's what can happen when you put tech structure around these kids. And I'm not saying he should be just allowed to do whatever he wants, but actually reduce the pressure on him, reduce the opportunity. Kind of always, the best way to reduce how much kids are doing this stuff is to put other things in place. Think about what's a real thing he's passionate about that's not tech, while you're building his emotional capacity and regulation skills. But yeah, and that's the bit. The timers, stopwatches instead of timers, is let's do 10 minutes and let's see how good we are at stopping. If we stop before 10 minutes, let's do something really awesome to reinforce. Let's try and stop at 10 minutes when it gets 10 minutes. But if we go over, it's okay, because we're still trying to get better at this. Does that make sense?
Yep. As
opposed to counting down is worst. Yeah, it's the worst thing, the counting down thing.
I like it.
Yeah. So yeah, but yeah, just it's an emotional regulation problem. That's the behaviour is the difficulty coming off tech. But as we're always trying to be curious as to what the reason is, and this kid is just dysregulating, and the biggest trigger for him is the tech. So try and as much as possible reduce the trigger and build his emotional regulation capacity in a lot of the strategies they're doing, but just keep investing in that and try and bring tech out of it.
Okay, nice. We've done a screen time episode as well.
Yes, that's true. Willy Wonka.
Challenge Shock Factory.
Yes.
Billy. Hi guys, love your work. My 2.5-year-old daughter walks happily to the car, removes her top dress, jumper and pants, then goes into the car seat, and as soon as you touch the straps to clip her in, she absolutely turns demonic. Like full body thrashing, screaming, "Too tight!" Tears and sometimes hitting or scratching us, or kicking siblings beside her. The sibling, he buckles himself in and is 4.5. I should say her straps are illegally loose. She is asking to not go in the car despite wanting to go to an event, childcare, play date, but she wants to walk. So that tells me she doesn't want to be upset either. What would your advice be on which of the behaviour changing theories we should try? We have at one point given her a lolly for every time she didn't say too tight or loose or lucid. But it lasted only a week and then even the reward didn't work. Now listening to your app, I'm lost. Do I promote the siblings' behaviour? Do I role play with toys? Please help.
Yeah, so it's great. I would use a couple of different approaches for this. I would use definitely co-regulation and thinking about that. Like you've probably had experiences like this. I definitely have. Yeah, car seats. Oh
Car seats.
Yes. And then every so often you'll actually like unintentionally pinch them or something with it and you're just like, oh God, I can't believe I've just further reinforced through classical conditioning a negative association with getting in this car seat. Obviously at the moment I'm not thinking it that articulately, but I'm just like,
oh goodness, I've done.
Yes, there goes that classical
Whoops-you-do, classical conditioning's kicked in.
Yeah, but yeah, thinking about that is just that it's a trigger that's coming off in the kid. It's a pressure point. You know, I think the social learning theory for toddlers can be really helpful when instead of saying, hey, watch this older sibling, it's actually, hey, show this older sibling, show daddy, show mummy how to do it. And we do that with Evie. So Evie has all these things that she shows us how to do. And we're actually, the trick is we're trying to help her get better at them. But we're not saying, look how good I am at doing this, watch me, through a modelling and imitation pathway. What we're actually thinking about in that social learning theory, what we're actually thinking about is I'm guiding you, but I'm doing it in a way that you feel empowered. So they want autonomy, they want power, these kids, and you can do it in a safe way that's actually healthy and helpful by saying, hey, can you show your brother how good you are? Hey, can you show daddy how to do this bit because he's not sure? And we do that all the time with Evie, including in the car seat. She shows us how to do it. She's the one that gets built up. Those are like, we set her up for that to be a positive thing. Now, it doesn't work all the time, but she's way, way better at it. She used to fight the car seat like crazy. So it's just a strategy that can use some of those learning theories in a helpful way.
Yep. Love that term, illegally loose.
Yeah, I know. It always gets me. If there's ever anything like that in a question, it bumps it up the list.
Hey, Dr. Bill and Nick, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude for your enlightening podcast. Your insights have been invaluable to me. After listening to your episode on White Men Can't Jump, I find myself eager to seek your guidance on the concept of imitation. In our blended family, comprising of 5 children aged between 21 and 6 years old, our home at life is often challenging. Our eldest 3 are now adults, while our 2 daughters, aged 12 and 6, are still at home. Living with my 12-year-old stepdaughter diagnosed with ADHD and ODD.
Oppositional defiance disorder.
Okay. 6 years ago, presents daily struggles for our family. We navigate each day with caution, fearing triggering a violent meltdown. This constant stress results in a tense atmosphere at home. Despite this, my husband and I remain a strong support system for each other. Dr. Billy, your discussion on children imitating behaviours during the middle primary years resonated deeply with me. I worry about the impact my youngest daughter's exposure to her sister's cruel and violent behaviour will have on future relationships. While we strive to be supportive and understanding, my youngest daughter is beginning to express frustration and anger at the lack of consequences for her sister's actions. What troubles me most is that I have become the sole target of my stepdaughter's violence and aggression, subjecting my youngest to witness this abuse daily. Though we are advised to ignore in parenting a child with ODD, I fear the lesson my youngest daughter is learning, that it is acceptable to endure harm from someone you love to maintain peace. Despite our efforts, including seeking professional help and educating ourselves, I remain uncertain of the best approach to support both my daughter through their challenges. The available professional help has dried up and we are now at a loss. Your guidance on navigating this difficult path would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, wow. That's the last question, but such a powerful one. Last question for this set. Yeah, how do you feel about that situation, that parenting?
Yeah, that's so tough. Like the modelling at a far lesser level and not at the complexity this parent's going through. Like I've got, one daughter hits the other and I'm trying not to focus on the hitting sort of stuff, but I do feel like I'm modelling that, that other kid's getting away with it a bit. Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
Sorry, like I do.
So what do you do? Say Freddie's doing something and you're worried that Ronnie, your younger daughter, is going to imitate her. Like, what do you do? What's the answer? What would you do? So Freddie's like doing something, blowing up, doing something really destructive, and then you start noticing it in Ronnie, that she's doing it too. Talking back, throwing stuff, refusing to eat food, any of those things that you're like, I can see you just copying your sister.
You probably expect a better answer from me, but like I might sort of address both of them. Like I wouldn't attack one of them and isolate them. I'd sort of say, hey guys, I'm seeing this from both of you at the moment. But then I'm trying to explain to a 3-year-old, so no, please give me the answer because that's a shit response.
No.
It's crap.
Because the important thing is the most powerful thing that you said is you're not signalling out one of them.
Yeah, I don't want to signal them because it isolates them and they just lose it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So I actually think that this parent should isolate out the 12-year-old, but in a positive way, and has to repair. The only way that you will resolve this is by repairing the relationship that you have with the 12-year-old. Because otherwise it's going to keep going like this, and there will be a great vulnerability in the 6-year-old in terms of how safe and secure they feel in the environment, but also from a social learning theory. Remember, one of the biggest influences on how likely a kid is to pick up a social learning theory from another child is how successful they see the kid in that behaviour, and also how powerful they see that other person. And young kids look up to older kids. So that's the challenge. We talked about this in the siblings app. How do we build the leadership role, the healthy behaviour stuff in the older kids, so that when the younger kids look up to them, they're seeing good role modelling that we actually want them imitating. It's just, this is a fractured relationship. This parent's phenomenal. This must be so hard. I've got my own personal opinions about ODD that we won't go into now, but we should do a future ep on it. But there is a better step than ignore. And it's not a criticism to whatever therapist or developmental ped or whatever is supporting that kid. But the reason that we say ignore with those kids is because they're just so prone to opposition. They just see everything in a battle. But it's a pattern they're caught up in. It's not because something's wrong with them. And what it needs to be seen is there's a step that's even better than... So we're talking about not battling them and opportunities for opposition, but there's a step that's better than ignore, and it's connect. Connect with this kid that's older, build a positive relationship with them. It'll take ages, but it will pay off hugely. It'll take months, but the payoff will be years.
Any quick practical steps on that, Billy? What
we've talked about, what do they enjoy, what are they good at, find connection points.
Yes, what do they enjoy, what are they good at?
Yeah, and just guide whatever that 12-year-old's into. You're going to have to pretend you're into it as well for a bit, because as much as I say that the other parent has to be into it as well, you've got to find a hook for this kid. You've got to try and change up the relationship with them, because that kid is a negative experience in a family that it's really destructive to that kid. It's really destructive to that parent, but it'll be destructive to the other kids. It'll be destructive to the other parent. It can, and we just get caught up in these ruts that we're just like, this is what it's like. That's not what it's like. I've seen the most. I've been, awful trauma. The kid we talked about yesterday is living in horror level trauma, but we will find a pathway out for him. He is currently in horrific developmental trauma. His pathway out is not medication. It's not a diagnosis. It's not anything special we're going to do in clinic. It's finding safe and predictable relationships for him that show him the world is not an awful place where violence and gore and unsafe things and awful things will be experienced by him. These kids get used to it, and we all get caught in this trap of this is just the way things are. Push out of it. That's what I would say to this parent. I wish out of all of the things that got sent in, I want to meet this mum the most and try and guide her and help her and support her in finding the strength and energy, which is going to be really hard, to try and build a positive relationship for this kid, because it'll change all of their lives if they can do that. And that's why, that's the last of the questions. We've got this kind of feedback which ties into that answer perfectly, which is why we've put it there, that shows this. And this is one of the really important bits before you read this out, mate. All the professionals that listen to this, we never thought it was going to be like that. We did it as a parenting podcast. We know there's so many professionals that listen to it, but this is a good example of sending in stuff. A lot of what I've learned, it has not been through the textbooks or years of uni or even from other developmental pediatricians that have taught me this stuff. It's been from other professionals in this space. Educators, family service workers, maternal and child health nurses, GPs. These guys are all amazing, and this is a good example of the answer is not in something special that we hold. Our training should guide us, but this is kind of what we're going to show, and we'll end on this. But there's going to be more questions coming on this topic because there was just so many amazing ones.
Yep, part 3 coming up, Billy. But let's finish on the feedback. Hi all, I'm a mental health clinician who works in infant, child and youth mental health, and I listen to your podcast often to give me new ideas and frameworks for my work with clients, as well as how to provide psychoeducation to them and the parents. The White Men Can't Jump episode resonated with me as it made me think of one of my clients who I remembered fondly and wanted to share his story. He was a 13-year-old boy who had come to me for counselling and case management following a treatment order which was put on after being in court. He was caught up in a cycle of constant conflict with his parents, which often involved police presence and child protection, physical fights with other peers, stealing, sneaking out at night and dabbling in substance use. He rarely attended school and has had little positive relationships in his life. His identity has become focused around delinquent behaviour and, not surprisingly, he developed friendships that encouraged this behaviour. He had little to fall back on as he had burnt his relationships at home and school, yet he was very likeable and had some good qualities that were just unable to shine through being so caught up in this cycle. I remember saying to our psychiatrist on the team, I just know this boy is going to end up in prison. After spending lots of time really trying to understand this young person, worked focused on helping parents to see through his behaviours and try to connect with the real him. After so much counselling and treatment, the real turning point was when his father decided to buy him a dirt bike and start taking him camping and dirt bike riding. The transformation was incredible and multifaceted. This young person started spending some time away from potential trouble and therefore had less time to be involved in delinquent behaviour. He reconnected with his father and started having positive relationships with his family moving forward. As a result of the shift in the relationship, he wanted to do things to make his family proud and had a motivator to change his behaviour. But most importantly, he shifted his identity from being a tough kid in trouble with the law to being a bike nerd. He knew the ins and outs of all dirt bikes and camping grounds and made this a huge part of who he was and what his passions were. His father buying his dirt bike and the consequences of this was more effective than the amount of therapy or diagnosis or medication could be. I hope this helps any of the listeners in the similar situations to understand and encourage children's passions and strengths and steer them in the right direction.
Yeah, phenomenal stuff.
Amazing.
Yeah, so find practical ways to change these kids' stories. So the most important bit's what happened to me, what happened to a lot of kids that I meet in clinic who, people will say, yeah, this kid's going to end up in prison. But all these kids, there's hope. It's why I do what I do, and this is why the podcast exists. That was great, mate.
That was awesome.
We still had to put a bit of a hot step through some of it, but look, we're going to come back with, we hope people, that's okay with everyone because we're changing it slightly, but I just can't cut so many questions. But we'll come back and we'll see what people think of that format.
Yeah. Looking forward to it. I've never finished on this note before with another part episode coming to a second part, but I think it's really cool, Billy. I think, honestly for me personally, there's a lot of the ones I'm going to pull out of this. I just really liked, I don't know, just hearing getting the questions really frames up all the theory we learnt last week. I just love it. I go, okay, this is what behaviours are. This is what people are thinking about. Actually, I was thinking about that bit too, but I hadn't considered that part. But this final bit, finishing on the connection piece, just by focusing on that can turn your world around, and that's what you've kind of said a lot of the way through. So really cool.
Yeah, it's definitely the emphasis of this one, but there'll be some other stuff that comes up next time. I think we've got dozens of questions about biting, so I promise we'll cover that.
Yeah.
And then some of the older teen stuff as well will be good to dive into as well.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Dr. Billy. Thanks very much, guys. Look forward to dropping part 3 shortly as well.
Hey, don't let your mother smell that beer on your breath. She'll take it out on me.
daddy, and what does he do?
Just use your best judgment. We trust you.